The priests of the California missions introduced winemaking to California in the late 1700s, but well into the 20th century, Paso Robles was still farm and cattle country. Vineyards produced mostly Cabernet Sauvignon and Zinfandel. Since the 1990s, the area's wine production has exploded with the introduction of the reds and whites of the Rhone Valley. And Paso Robles is now home to more than 40 varietals and nearly 300 wineries. How did the great Rhone vines make their way to Paso Robles?
When we started, there were 17 wineries in Paso. There's now 280. And when we started, there was no footprint for Rhone varieties here. And there was Zinfandel, there was beginning to be some Cabernet and related grapes. But even though there was a history of Syrah here, because Gary Eberle started, he was the first person to really popularize Syrah. By the late 80s, he had decided it was too hard to sell and gone back to making Cabernet. Okay. So if you fast forward now, 25 years later, Paso has become really the epicenter of the California Rhone movement. Well, the first thing that we needed to do when we started in '89 was to bring in cuttings of all the principal Rhone varieties. Right. So that gave us new, clean, virus-free material of a whole bunch of grapes that had never been used in California before. Having these new high-quality clones of Mourvèdre and Grenache and Syrah and Roussanne and Viognier, and also new grapes like Counoise and Grenache Blanc and Picpoul available to people, I think has given a huge shot in the arm to the whole Rhone movement.
Winemakers continually look for the perfect combination of characteristics to produce their distinctive blends.
Roussanne is it's kind of the richest and densest and most substantial of the white grapes from the Rhone. It's also the most age-worthy, and in fact, Roussanne is a grape that we've been learning more and more to treat like a red rather than like a white.
The foundation of many Paso blends is Mourvèdre.
I'll start you with the 100% Mourvèdre for the red, and this is our most important red grape. And people think of it, if they think of it at all, as one of that trio of Rhone red grapes. People think Grenache, Syrah, Mourvèdre. And in terms of flavors, Syrah is very black fruit dominant. Grenache is kind of purple fruit. And Mourvèdre is this dark red fruit, plums and currants. And it has a leathery, loamy meatiness to it that gives a wine kind of a center. I think it's good to taste the Mourvèdre before we do the Esprit. And so this is the Esprit de Tablas, which is our flagship red. And it is based on Mourvèdre. This vintage is 40% Mourvèdre. And then we add Grenache and Syrah and Counoise. And each of them plays a role, kind of like I talked about with the whites, where Mourvèdre is that core, chewy, red fruit, leathery, age-worthiness. Grenache is generous and open and fun and appealing. Syrah is minerally and structured and firm, kind of keeps the others from coming across as too sweet. And then Counoise is this kind of zesty, brambly grape that you add a little bit of into a blend the same way that you might squeeze lemon onto a dish of food, where it's not that you necessarily taste the lemon, it's that the brighter acidity brings out all the other flavors that are there. Our main focuses are our blends. There's this idea in kind of the American wine world that a blending grape is somehow inferior to a regular grape, which it's a misunderstanding in a lot of ways. I mean, you think of Cabernet, which is like this classic grape on its own. In Bordeaux, it's mostly blended. What determines how good it is basically all of the stuff that happened before you picked it. It's when it sprouted, how long it spent on the vine, what its yields were, what the weather was like as it was ripening. Did it ripen slowly over a longer period of time, or did it ripen faster under a heat wave? Did it get rained on? Or not. Right. And all these things will determine levels of intensity and the balance of different flavors. Right. I mean, wines change over time. There's some where you can think of the fruit evolving and the structural elements evolving at more or less the same pace. And there are others where the fruit evolves at one pace and then the structural elements take longer to evolve. And Mourvèdre is one of those ones where there's a period in the middle where the fruit, the tannins don't have this kind of lush, youthful fruit to cushion them any longer. But then you wait a little longer and then the tannins soften and things come back into balance. The main thing which is dominating us right now is the fact that we're 4 years into the drought here in California. So the vineyard looks great, actually. It looks healthier than we feel like we have any possible right to expect. But quantities are going to be low this year. In general, if you have a fairly long ripening cycle as we've had this year, not too much heat and low yields, it's a recipe for a really good vintage.
Right.
So we're hopeful that quality will be really, really high even if quantity is low.
Right.